Welcome to The Explainer. So, I want you to imagine a pendulum, one that's been swinging like crazy for 50 years. On one side, you've got this frantic, high speed push towards Western style modernity, and on the other, a powerful gravitational pull back towards religious tradition. That, right there, is the story of Iran for the last half century. It's a nation with just incredible potential, but it's been caught in this cycle of whiplash inducing change. Today, we're going to unpack those swings and ask, where does the pendulum land next? Okay, let's start right here with this really famous quote from Ayatollah Khamenei, the leader of the 1979 revolution. What he's saying is, look, this wasn't just about the economy being bad. You can't understand modern Iran if you think it's just about bread and butter issues. You have to go deeper into the soul of the nation, its identity, its culture, and this really fierce, deep-seated quest for justice. And this gets right to the heart of Iran's story. It's a country of just massive contradictions. I mean, on one hand, you have this mind-boggling potential, the world's second biggest oil reserves, a super young, highly educated population, and a culture that goes back thousands of years. But on the other hand, there's this constant struggle, an economy that's always boom or bust, and the huge challenge of holding a really diverse society together. That tension? That's the engine of our whole story. All right, so our story really kicks into high gear in the 1970s with the last Shah of Iran, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. This was a man with a very specific vision, and let me tell you, he was in a hurry. He pictured this future where Iran was a modern industrial powerhouse, and he was absolutely determined to get there fast. You see, after the 1973 oil crisis, Iran was suddenly just swimming in cash, and the Shah saw his moment. He launched what he called the Great Civilization, which was basically this whirlwind of modernization. We're talking billions upon billions of dollars pumped into new factories, massive dams, sprawling highways. The goal? To basically turn Iran into a Western-style industrial giant, and to do it seemingly overnight. Now, if you look at where the money went, it tells a really fascinating story. Yeah, sure, social spending on things like schools and hospitals went way up. We're talking 15 to 20 times more. But get this, the defense budget, it exploded, a 43-fold increase. That kind of peels back the curtain, right? It shows you the Shah's real ambition. He wasn't just building a modern country, he was trying to build a military superpower to dominate the whole region. But this frantic pace of change, it was literally tearing the country apart at the seams. All that oil money created wild inflation, the rich got way richer, the poor got poorer. The traditional merchants in the bazaar and the powerful clergy felt like their entire world was just vanishing. And the Shah's obsession with ancient pre-Islamic Persian kings, to a lot of devout Muslims, it just felt foreign, weird. And on top of it all, you had this massive generation of young people who felt like they were watching a big party they just weren't invited to. So all those cracks in society were about to become a full-blown earthquake. The pendulum was getting ready to swing back and swing back hard, kicking off a decade of revolution and war that would reshape the nation forever. The decade that followed was just one of almost unimaginable turmoil. First, you have the revolutionary chaos that brings the Islamic Republic to power. And then, almost immediately, that's followed by the immense national trauma of the Iran-Iraq War, a brutal, grinding conflict that would define an entire generation. The change in everyday life was just dramatic, and, nowhere was this more true than for women. Under the Shah, they had gained the right to vote, they were becoming more and more visible in public life. After the revolution, everything changed. Women's roles in society became a central focus for the new government, and many of their freedoms were rolled back in the name of new Islamic laws. It's hard to even wrap your head around the economic devastation of this period. By the time the war with Iraq was over, the average Iranian's income had been slashed by nearly half. Poverty in the cities doubled. It was like the hopeful dreams of the revolution had just crashed head-on into the brutal reality of war and international isolation. And a really key institutional change that happens here is the creation of bonyads. Think of them as these religious foundations. They basically took over all the businesses and assets of the old elite who fled, but over time, they morphed into these massive, powerful economic empires, often operating with very little oversight, and they totally reshaped the landscape of Iran's economy. After a decade of revolution and war, Iran was just exhausted. The pendulum began to swing again, but this time it was away from pure ideology and towards something a lot more practical, just survival. It was time to try and rebuild a shattered nation. So, under President Akbar Hashemi Rafsanjani, the focus totally shifts. He puts forward this really ambitious agenda. The to-do list was basically rebuild everything that was broken, start selling off state-run companies, and cautiously, very cautiously, reopen Iran to the rest of the world to try and get foreign investment to get the country back on its feet. But, this new path, it came with its own dangers. Opening up the economy led to soaring inflation. So even though the economy was technically growing on paper, the cost of everyday things went through the roof. This led to a lot of public anger, even riots. It was a perfect illustration of the tightrope Iran's leaders were trying to walk. And that widespread discontent, well, it paved the way for another dramatic swing of the pendulum. This time, back towards a much more populist, much more confrontational stance on the world stage. And this would have huge consequences for the Iranian people. The rise of Mahmoud Ahmadinejad completely changed the tone. He tapped right into that public frustration with populist promises to put oil money directly on people's dinner tables, while at the same time pursuing a really defiant foreign policy, especially when it came to Iran's nuclear program. Now, that defiance on the world stage came at a heavy, heavy price, crippling international sanctions. Iran was basically unplugged from the global financial system. Its currency collapsed. Inflation went north of 40%. And this wasn't just some abstract political chess game. It meant real, daily suffering for millions of ordinary Iranians who were just trying to make a living. And this right here, this really boils down to the two competing economic philosophies that have been basically at war with each other since the revolution. On one side, you've got a state-controlled model focused on social justice and self-sufficiency. On the other, a push for a more open, market-driven economy. And this fundamental disagreement just keeps pulling the country in two different directions at once. So after 50 years of these huge swings back and forth, what comes next? Well, the answer might not lie in politics or economics, but in Iran's single most important asset, its people. You see, the revolution led to a massive baby boom, and the legacy of that is this huge generation of young, educated, and globally connected Iranians. They've grown up in this constant cycle of crisis and change. Their expectations for the future are completely different from their parents' generation, and they're the ones who will ultimately decide what happens next. And this, right here, this is the million-dollar question, isn't it? What happens when a generation that's grown up with smartphones, that lives under immense economic and social pressure, that has a constant window to the outside world, what happens when they decide it's time to write their own chapter of history? This motto, it's from an Iranian research group, and it kind of suggests a potential path forward. Maybe the future isn't about choosing one ideology over another. Maybe it's about finding strength in the rich, complex, and incredibly resilient tapestry of the Iranian people themselves. So we'll leave you with that question to think about. After 50 years of swinging between extremes, what will the next swing of the pendulum bring? Is it a move towards something totally new, or a return to the past? The future of this fascinating, complex nation really does hang in the balance. Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.